This is what you should feel. You are what you should feel.
Hi there. I'm a 39-year-old female, and this occurred, I think, a little over a year ago. This was a very real event. No drugs, no alcohol. I was in our bathroom, which had a line of sight out the back window to where my hubby passes by before coming in the door. So I was just doing my hair and looked over to see him outside the window walking up, switching the Kroger bag to his other hand to grab his keys. Then heard the door and watched him walk by the kitchen. I said, "Hey baby," and he didn't hear me. Not surprising, his hearing isn't the best. But I heard him lay the bags down, then lay his keys and wallet down. So I stuck a clip in that last bit of hair to do, and started out of the bathroom door to give him a hug and kiss. Well, here it is. Instantly when I walked outside the doorway of the bathroom, everything was completely different. All the lights were out, and they had certainly been on a moment prior. Totally weirded out, I felt shaky and whatnot, but I guess managed to walk a few steps to look toward the kitchen, only to see my husband wasn't even there. Then, before I even had time to attempt to process what the hell just happened, I saw through our kitchen window his headlights coming down the driveway. This was when I started to get extra weirded out, and for sure had to sit down. I remember I propped myself sitting on the edge of the couch arm, and next part is what freaks me out the absolute most. I couldn't believe my eyes at all. As I watched him walk across that window, it was like someone had just literally rewound a tape and was replaying it. The exact same motions, the same exact sounds, all the way through, including him setting the keys and bags down. The only thing I could think at that point is how crazy I would actually sound if I told anyone. Except I told my husband right when he got there. So I just want to know if anyone has any ideas of what happened. I'm open to hear about it. It's the single, most unbelievable, existential type thing that's happened in my life. I will never forget it. Thank you to anyone who bothered to listen. So, I wanted to share a rather unsettling experience I've had recently. I've been trying to piece it together, but it still creeps me out whenever I think about it. To this day, it's probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me in my life. So, last Friday, my school had an early finish day, and I got home around 1 p.m. My dad comes home around 6:30 p.m, so I knew I'd have the house to myself for a while. Nothing unusual there. I've been home alone plenty of times. I made myself a quick snack, just a PB&J and some chips, and plopped down in front of the TV in the living room. I remember feeling pretty relaxed, grateful for the early end to the school week. About 15 minutes into my show, I heard heavy footsteps coming down the hallway, leading away from the kitchen. At first, I thought maybe I was just hearing things, but the footsteps grew louder and clearer. I knew the sound of them. They sounded exactly like my dad's footsteps. I glanced up and saw my dad walking past the living room doorway, headed toward the front of the house. The weirdest part was that he was staring right at me the whole time, but didn't slow down or say a word. It was definitely his face, his clothes, everything. I figured he must have come home early for some reason. Maybe something to do with work. "Dad?" I called out, expecting him to backpack and explain. No response. He must be in a hurry, I thought, and went back to my show. But the image of him walking past so silently really stuck with me. Not 5 minutes later, I heard those same heavy footsteps again. This time I was more alert, I looked up and sure enough, my dad walked past the doorway again, still staring at me, but with the same unnerving silence. My heart started to race. It was strange that he didn't acknowledge me, and even weirder that he was apparently pacing my house without so much as a word. It definitely looked like him, and the footsteps sounded like his. The feeling I got from him was not the same feeling I got from my dad. I grabbed my phone and called him, but it went straight to voicemail. A growing sense of dread filled the room. I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe he left his phone in the car or something. Just as I was about to head down the hallway to find him, my phone rang. It was my dad. "Hey, what's up?" he said cheerily. "Did you come home early today?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No. I'm at the office. Won't be home until around 6:30 as usual." "Why?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "I thought I saw you," I stammered. "Someone who looks exactly like you is walking around the house." There was a long pause. "Stay where you are. I'll leave work early and be home as soon as I can. Just lock the door and don't move." I did as he said, my mind racing with all kinds of terrifying possibilities. I stayed glued to my spot, every creak of the old house amplifying my anxiety. The footsteps had stopped, but the house now felt eerie and dead silent. My dad got home about an hour later, clearly on edge. We searched the entire house together, but of course we found nothing out of the ordinary. No signs of anyone else having been there. That evening, over dinner, I finally told both my parents what I had seen. To my surprise, they exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. My mum sighed and said, "I've seen him too." They went on to share their own bizarre encounters. My dad had apparently seen what I now know as a doppelganger of me a few months ago while I was at school. My mum had seen herself in the hallway mirror, just standing and staring blankly back. More than once, actually. We've lived in this house a couple of years now, and while we've all experienced little oddities here and there, nothing had been quite like this. To this day, we still don't have an explanation. Maybe our house is haunted, or perhaps there's some other phenomenon at play. All I know is that I'm not keen on staying home alone anymore. I had my first encounter with a doppelganger 2 weeks ago. I convinced myself it was in my head. Must have been a waking dream of sorts. Me and my boyfriend went out. I myself had only 2 beers over the 5.5 hours we were out, so not even buzzed. I was in my kitchen waiting for my dog to finish his business so I could lock up and go to bed, when I see movement to my right. To put this in context, my kitchen is a rectangle with my family room to my left. My living room would be behind me with my master bedroom off that to the right, and to the right of my kitchen is the laundry room. Open floor plan. Okay, back to the movement on my right. I turned, confused, because I thought my boyfriend had went into the bedroom to start getting things ready for bed, when I see him in the doorway to the laundry room smiling at me. Then he did a 180 very dramatically, took a step forward, and proceeded to comically walk behind the wall, into the laundry room. Monty Python's Flying Circus Ministry of Silly Walks bit is the closest I can come to describing how he walked away. I, confused, followed, asking him what he was smoking. There was no one there. There was no way out of the laundry room. One way in, one way out. Then it came back this morning, and this time my dog reacted. It showed up again in my bedroom doorway, smiling, and gestured for me to follow. I was 100% sure my boyfriend was outside getting our vehicles started for work. My dog freaked out and got between it and myself, and he was pissed. And when I looked down at him and tried to grab him, because shoot, I don't know what the hell it is, but I don't want it to hurt my dog, it was just gone. I looked in my bedroom, my closet, and my attached bathroom. Nothing. There is no other way out. It would have had to have walked through me to get away. Why did it want me to follow it? A few nights ago, my husband and I decided to go outside for a last beer in the fresh air before bed, as we often do. He often keeps a stash of some beer in the fridge in our detached garage, but I preferred the ones in the kitchen. I walked to the fridge in the kitchen to grab a couple of beers, and was going to bring one for my husband as well. But when I looked up, I saw him heading towards the detached garage. So I figured, never mind. I'll just grab one since he's probably getting his own from out there. For reference, our detached garage is a short walk from the house, but it's on the side and slightly obscured from the back door. As soon as I looked down to put the extra beer back in the fridge, my husband, who was now somehow right behind me, asks for his beer. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I asked him how he got behind me so quickly since I literally just saw him heading to the garage. He told me he didn't go to the garage. He went to check the mailbox with mail in his hand. The mailbox is in the opposite direction of the garage. I was positive he was messing with me and kept asking if he was joking. He said no. He walked to the mailbox and back. Check the cameras, he said. I checked the cameras, still convinced he was pranking me. He never went to the garage. He went to the mailbox and back. Nobody was near the garage at all. I swear, I saw him heading to the garage. The next night, we had another strange experience. We were watching TV in the living room when I heard a noise from the kitchen. It sounded like the fridge opening and closing. Wondering what it was, I got up to check. As I walked towards the kitchen, I saw my husband standing there, looking puzzled. "Did you already finish your beer?" I asked. He looked at me, confused. "I've been here the whole time." My heart started racing. I was sure, no, positive, he was sitting right next to me on the couch a few minutes ago. I ran back to the living room to check, and to my surprise, there was no one there, but there was a faint indent in the couch where someone may have been sitting. The feeling of unease settled deep in my stomach. A few nights later, things got even creepier, if that's even possible. We were lying in bed, just about to fall asleep, when I heard what sounded like footsteps in the hallway. My husband had been up late working in his office down the hall, so I assumed it was him coming to bed. But when I turned over to ask him if he was finally done for the night, he was lying right next to me, sound asleep. I shook him awake and told him I heard someone in the hallway. He groggily got up and checked, but there was nothing. The house was silent. We both went back to bed, uneasy but too tired to discuss it further. In the morning, we talked about the noise and decided to check the cameras again. As we reviewed the footage, we saw something truly disturbing. While we were in bed, the camera outside the front of the house caught a figure that looked exactly like my husband, standing at the edge of the driveway, staring at the house. He didn't move. He just stood there, facing the house. It sent chills down my spine. We stared at each other, not knowing what to make of it. Who or what had been standing outside? Was it the same person I had seen heading to the garage? Why were these sightings happening more frequently? Last night we determined to stay awake and keep an eye out. My husband set up his laptop in the living room, connected to all the camera feeds. Every little noise made us jumpy, but we stayed vigilant. Around 2 a.m., just when we thought it might have been all in our heads, we saw it again. The figure appeared at the edge of our driveway. slowly moving towards the house. It looked exactly like my husband. Same height, same build, even the same clothes he wore that day. We watched in terror as it got closer and closer, only stopping right at the front door. My husband grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and cautiously approached the door. I monitored the cameras, keeping an eye on every angle. He swung the door open and shone the flashlight outside, but there was nothing there. No sign of anyone or anything. One moment it was there, the next it had vanished. The rest of the night was a blur. We barely slept, but the feeling of unease hadn't left us. This morning, over coffee, we discussed what had happened. We resolved to document every incident and consider getting more sophisticated security equipment. These events were becoming too frequent to ignore, and we needed to understand what was happening to keep our sanity intact. So far, we have no answers, only more questions. I work a typical 9-to-5 job, but due to an unexpected system outage at the office, we were sent home early. I arrived back at my apartment around 11:45 a.m., which was a nice surprise since I was expecting a long day. My roommate, Sam, works from home and usually stays cooped up in his room, totally engrossed in his work. I figured the early afternoon would be a good chance for us to hang out a bit, so I made myself a quick snack and sat down with my laptop in the living room. About 20 minutes later, I heard Sam's door open. His room is right next to the living room, so it caught my attention immediately. I looked up and saw Sam staring at me from his doorway. He didn't say anything. He just stood there looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Hey Sam," I called out. "Everything all right?" He didn't respond, just kept staring for a few unsettling seconds before turning and heading down the hall towards the bathroom. It was odd, but I chalked it up to him being engrossed in some work-related problem. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps again, this time coming back from the bathroom. I looked up and saw him walking back. He walked straight past me, again without saying a word. He went back into his room. I called out to him again, but no response. It was getting really weird. Sam isn't the type to just ignore me like that. I decided to text him. "Hey man, you good? You walked past me twice without saying anything." To my surprise, Sam replied almost instantly. "I'm on a call, haven't left my room since lunch. Why?" A chill ran down my spine. If Sam hadn't left his room, who or what had I seen walking around my apartment? I decided to knock on his door. Sam opened it almost immediately, headset still on, and gave me a puzzled look. "What's up?" "I thought I saw you out here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Someone who looked just like you walked past me, twice." Sam's face went pale. He glanced around the room, then muttered, "Just give me a minute," to whoever was on the call, and pulled me into his room, shutting the door behind us. "Are you sure it wasn't just a trick of the light or something?" he asked, clearly trying to rationalize it. "No way," I insisted. "It was definitely you. Same clothes and everything." Sam nodded slowly and picked up his phone. "Let's check the security camera." Our apartment came with a basic security system, including a camera in the hallway. We pulled up the footage and fast forward to around the time I started hearing the footsteps. My heart pounded as I watched the timestamp tick closer and closer. And there it was. Sam, or what looked exactly like him, walking out of his room, staring directly at the couch where I was sitting, then heading towards the bathroom. A few minutes later, the same figure walked back down the hall and re-entered Sam's room. But here's the kicker. The real Sam never moved from his chair. We both watched in stunned silence. the figure was an exact copy down to the slightest detail, but it wasn't Sam. Nothing else happened for the rest of the day, but neither of us could shake the unease. That evening, we discussed what had happened. Sam confided that he had sometimes felt watched in the apartment, but he always brushed it off as his imagination. Being someone who's somewhat interested in the paranormal, I believe it was a doppelganger. But why? We're both freaked out and have started looking into ways to cleanse the apartment, just in case. Something happened to me last week that was too eerie to keep to myself. I'm hoping someone can shed some light on it because honestly, I'm freaked out. I live in a small town and work the night shift at a local diner. It's not usually busy, so I'm often alone until my coworker, Jenny, comes in at dawn. Last night was one of those slow nights. Around 2 a.m. I was wiping down the counter when I heard the bell over the door jingle. I looked up and saw a woman walk in. She was wearing a long coat and looked somewhat familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Welcome," I said, forcing a smile despite the late hour. "Can I get you anything?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the counter and sat down on one of the stools, staring at me intently. Her eyes had a strange intensity that made me uncomfortable. I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something unsettlingly familiar about her features, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I tried again. "Can I help you?" No response. She just continued to stare. Her silence was unnerving, so I decided to get her a coffee anyway. I poured a mug and placed it in front of her, but she didn't touch it. As I went back to cleaning, I kept glancing her way. She hadn't moved, just kept staring at me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Do I know you from somewhere?" I asked, hoping to break the tension. No response. She remained silent and unmoving, her gaze locked on me. It was then I noticed something truly unsettling. She looked exactly like me. Same face, same hair tied back in a ponytail, even wearing similar clothes. I felt my blood turn to ice. I was looking at my exact double. I reached out a hand, trembling slightly. But just as my fingers were about to touch her, she stood up abruptly. The sudden movement startled me, and I stepped back. Before she turned to leave, she uttered a single sentence, one that has stuck with me since.
Stay here until dawn.
And then she abruptly turned and left, without saying another word. Her voice was so flat, yet so familiar. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of warning, a threat? I debated whether to call the police, but decided against it, thinking they might dismiss it as a prank or a case of mistaken identity. Her message kept echoing in my mind. As my shift ended, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. I decided to heed the warning and stayed put in the diner, much to the confusion of Jenny when she arrived. "Why are you still hanging around?" she asked, concerned. I explained what happened, and we both sat there trying to make sense of it. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a news alert. There had been a gas leak in my apartment complex that resulted in an explosion around 4 a.m. Several apartments, including mine, were heavily damaged. If I had gone home, I could have been seriously injured, or even worse. I showed Jenny the news, and she turned pale. "Who was that woman?" she asked, voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Was she a doppelganger? A guardian angel? Or something else entirely? All I know is that her warning saved my life. This happened to me last year. It was really strange and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It was a Saturday and I decided to take a break from my busy city life and go for a hike in the nearby mountains. There's a trail I love that loops around the small lake and offers some stunning views. It's usually not very crowded, which is perfect for me when I want some peace and quiet. I set off early in the morning, hoping to catch the sunrise over the lake. The air was crisp, and I could hear birds chirping as I made my way up the trail. Everything was going as planned until I reached the halfway point, just above the lake. As I was climbing a particularly steep section, I spotted another hiker about 30 feet ahead of me. The odd thing was, he was wearing the exact same clothes as me. A blue jacket, black hiking pants, and even the same brand of boots. I remember thinking that it was a funny coincidence, and I quickened my pace a bit to catch up and maybe share a laugh about our similar outfits. When I got closer, I called out, "Hey, nice jacket." The hiker turned around and my blood ran cold. It was like looking into a mirror. He had my face, my hair, even my slight stubble. Every detail was identical. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other in shock. Then he, my doppelganger, smiled and said, "I thought I was the only one with this jacket." His voice was exactly like mine too. I mustered up a nervous laugh and replied, "Yeah, small world, I guess." Trying to keep my composure, I extended my hand. "Name's Alex." He shook my hand and I could feel the same roughness from our shared hiking trips. "Alex," he echoed. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was going insane. We fell into step together, and as we walked, I cautiously asked him about his life. Every single detail matched mine. He lived in the same city, he had the same job, and even mentioned pets that I owned. It was like talking to my twin, except I knew I didn't have one. When we reached the lake, we sat down on a rock to enjoy the view. That's when things got even weirder. My doppelganger gazed across the water and said, "I come here to clear my head. Sometimes I feel like my life isn't real, like I'm just living someone else's story." His words struck a chord with me, because I had been feeling the same way recently. Everything in my life had been running on autopilot, and I was struggling with a sense of déjà vu, of living the same day over and over. We sat in silence for a while. Then he stood up and said, "I'm glad we met. Maybe this means something. Take care, Alex." With that, he gave me a nod and walked off down the trail. I watched him until he disappeared from sight, then made my way back to my car, feeling like I'd been in a dream. Since that encounter, I've been obsessed with finding out what happened. I've read about doppelgangers and the theories surrounding them, but none of them make sense to me. Also, from what I've read, they don't usually speak. Was he perhaps a glimpse into an alternate version of my life? A warning? I don't know. The encounter still troubles me to this day. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story to share, please send it to my email in the description below. This channel is mostly made up of stories sent in by viewers or people they know. Another way to support the channel is to sign up for my Patreon, where you can watch my videos ad-free. More perks will be added in the new year. Also, I will be adding new designs to the merch store, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you all for your continuous support. And remember,
Papa loves you.